lost at sea.
Now is the time to move on. This is the time for solutions. Feel the motion. Be new is born. Me and me, none of you. Now I'm connected to you. Me and me, none of you. Be new will do it for you. This is the time for solutions. Be new is for you.
Aquí estamos de vuelta en BNew Mobility. Bueno, todos estamos en el mismo saco inmenso. BNew tejiendo esta inmensa red de colaboradores que, bueno, sin ella sería imposible, pues bueno, avanzar. A lo mejor iríamos más rápido, pero seguro que no llegaríamos tan lejos como con los partners que nos acompañan y hacen posible, ¿no? Esta super red de colaboraciones. Empezamos por Servihabitat, el servidor líder en la gestión de activos financieros e inmobiliarios. Por Akbar, que también nos acompaña, la empresa de gestión en ciclo integral del agua con más de 150 años de historia. Por supuesto, lo hemos visto aquí también, el Ayuntamiento de Barcelona, la Administración Pública a nuestro lado y, cómo no, el Consorci de la Zona Franca de Barcelona, fabricando oportunidades de futuro como esta, de futuro en el presente, que es este BNew. Os voy a contar una historia también de futuro en el presente. Había una vez en un lugar muy, muy lejano de Emiratos Árabes, una ciudad, Abu Dhabi, que se embarcó en un viaje para desarrollar una de las ciudades más sostenibles del mundo. Corría ya por el año 2006 cuando empezó esta aventura. Esa ciudad es Masdar City, es un centro de innovación, investigación y desarrollo que promueve soluciones reales en materia de eficiencia energética del agua, de movilidad y también, como no, de inteligencia artificial, que hemos visto que va todo de la mano. En la siguiente keynote vamos a saber de primera mano cómo está este proyecto de Masdar City. Os presento a Karim Palmieri. Karim es asesor senior de Fieldstone Private Group. Tiene más de 17 años de experiencia trabajando con gobiernos, clientes del sector industrial y financiero, pues acompañándoles en sus estrategias de crecimiento internacional, de relaciones con inversores, recaudación de fondos y atracción también de inversores. Ha asesorado a clientes en Europa, en Oriente Medio, en África, cubriendo en su tarea a múltiples sectores. Además, es miembro del Consejo Asesor de FEMAC, el socio administrativo oficial de FEMOZA, la Federación Líder Mundial de Zonas Económicas Especiales y Libres. Karim Palmieri, welcome to BNew Mobility. The session is yours.
Thank you very much, and thank you for Barcelona New Economic Week for having me on this panel. It's a pleasure to be opposite Stephen from Masdar to talk about kind of the innovation of mobility. From my side, I work primarily in investments for renewable energy infrastructure across the Middle East and North Africa, and we've seen huge investments into renewable energies and sustainability. Masdar has always been a leader for this, and so yeah, Stephen, it'll be a pleasure to hear you tell us what's been happening there.
Thank you, Karim. Do we have a video to start, or have we already played that?
I think there's a video.
From a meeting of minds came a definitive concept. A dynamic city where sustainability, innovation, business, and community come together as one, redefining how we live together. A hub to generate ideas. A place developed for businesses to thrive. A city where things happen, all within a groundbreaking community. A destination where the ideas of today become the realities of tomorrow for a sustainable future.
We are the source. A source to build a brighter future. For everyone. A future of clean energy and sustainable development. Today, we are the source of pioneering innovative solutions, meeting the needs of people around the globe. We are powering communities and tackling climate change, building a better world for the past 15 years. We are the source of a legacy that began in the UAE and has reached across the world. A legacy that is growing each day. A legacy we are creating together for a sustainable future.
Great. First off, thank you, Kareem, and thank you to the Barcelona New Energy Week for allowing me to speak here. It is my privilege to talk about Masdar. It's a place where I've been working for the past 12 years and have seen it grow from an idea, from a blueprint to really a global leader and a thriving city. I am calling in from Abu Dhabi, which is the capital of the United Arab Emirates and is also the part with the oil. For those of you who don't know, Abu Dhabi has about 8% of the world's easy oil reserves, and hydrocarbons are what have allowed the amazing pace of human development over the past 100 years, and are right now kind of key to everything that we do. Everywhere that we move, the way we eat, the way we live, the way we communicate is all made possible through hydrocarbons. But also, hydrocarbons are the major cause of climate change. That if we want to continue this development, if we want to have life on Earth for the next 100 years, for the next 200 years, the next thousands of years, we need to take climate change very seriously and absolutely change the way we get around, change the way that we power our buildings, change the way that we power our industry. And for Abu Dhabi, Masdar is that catalyst, is that change. And so we have two business units. One is Masdar City, which we'll talk about quite a bit, but the other one is Masdar Clean Energy, which has over 12 gigawatts of renewable energy in more than 30 countries around the world, including one of our first projects, Hemasolar in Spain, which is exciting both from how early it was in our development, one of our very first international projects, but also because it provides 24/7 power from renewable sources. And I think everyone understands that as we transition to renewable sources, we're going to need to provide the same 24/7 power that hydrocarbons are providing. Then if you look at Masdar City, where I've been working for 12 years, it is the physical embodiment of sustainability. It's a demonstration of how, even in this very, very difficult climate, and for those of you who have not had the chance to visit the UAE, we are one of the warmest places on Earth. Temperatures are still in the high 30s in early October. And everything we do is about how do we consume less. So our master plan is shifted to catch prevailing winds. Our buildings are built the way our cities planned the way cities in Southern Europe have been planned for hundreds of years, or cities in Shibom and Yemen. City buildings are close to each other, streets are narrow, community centers are in walking distance, because we believe that the most sustainable trip is one you can take on foot or on bicycle instead of an electric vehicle. And then, since this is primarily about mobility, mobility has been kind of at the heart of Masdar City since its beginning. And this is really for two reasons. One, if we're going to get serious about reducing carbon in the environment, right now, globally, about 14% of carbon emissions come from surface transportation. But in developed countries, that's a much higher percent because of the number of cars that are on the street, the type and size of cars. In my home state of California, almost 40% of emissions come from surface transportation, and the numbers in Abu Dhabi are probably somewhat similar based on the size of the highways and the size of the cars are similar to where to California. So if we're going to be serious about climate change, we have to take on surface transportation. But also, your mobility has such a big impact on the way you live. And the ability to use clean, sustainable transportation to get to your basic needs is such a plus for the way you live. I think all of us have been stuck in more traffic jams than we'd ever want to in every major city on earth. Barcelona, no exception. Abu Dhabi, no exception. That we have traffic problems just about everywhere on earth, particularly in cities that were designed before vehicles were, before we had cars as our major form of transportation. And so now we need, I think we all see the future, and Kareem and I will talk about this now, as shared, autonomous, and electric. And Masdar has made pioneering develops in each one of those. From our original investment in transportation in something called the PRT, or Personal Rapid Transit, this is basically like a horizontal elevator. It's used throughout the day. It's used on demand. You press the button and tell it where to go, but it goes on a fixed route, much like an elevator. And so this was a big step forward. In 2009, 2010, when we actually opened this, it was the most advanced personal transportation system on earth. But we've had a great deal of advancements on them, both at Masdar and around the world. And so we've moved on to our next autonomous transportation, which is Navia. We're pioneers in electric vehicles in 2009 with 10 Mitsubishi MEIVs. And what we found out was that 10 years ago, the electric vehicles were not ready for the Abu Dhabi climate. We've moved on to Chevy Bolt, Tesla e-car. We have car sharing with Tesla. We are the only place on earth that you can actually rent a Tesla by the minute. And it's been a great opportunity for people to get to drive what is, in my mind, one of the coolest cars on earth for about 25 cents a minute, 25 US cents a minute. You can take a Tesla out around Masdar and around Abu Dhabi. So that's a bit of the background of what we've been doing at Masdar, but Kareem, happy to have this conversation with you.
Super. Thank you very much, Stephen. Again, always impressed about the innovations in Masdar. I thought we'd stick with the systems that you've put in place already that have been most effective, and then potentially move to how those could be translated across the world. Also, I'd, along the way, focus on the kind of investments that you think would be critical to hit sort of climate change targets, carbon neutrality by 2050, et cetera. I know Masdar is kind of pioneering the way there. And so I think to start, potentially the focus on the difference between a greenfield market, which is Masdar, where you can start from scratch, rather than somewhere like Barcelona, where you could potentially, it would be slightly more difficult to integrate those systems. What do you feel with the systems that are best translatable?
Well, I think you're absolutely right. We do have the advantage of being greenfield. And much like countries that were able to skip the fixed network for telephones and move straight to cellular, we've been able to skip some of the old way of building things. But even we, in the 12 years that I've been at Masdar, have seen significant improvements. So when we first started, we were looking at a 40% energy. We'll move off mobility a bit and talk about buildings. We're looking at a 40% reduction in energy consumption in buildings. In 2016, we finished the Eco Villa, which is a net zero building, which means it produces as much energy as it uses throughout the year. Obviously, we produce more during the daytime and pull from the grid at night. Now, in temperate climates, in comfortable European climates, this is an easier thing to do. But in Abu Dhabi, in this region, that was the first one. Well, that was in 2016. We finished that. Now that we've piloted it and tested it, our next buildings are coming out with a 10,000 square meter office building that will be energy neutral for the year. So net zero energy for the year, and then a 5,000 square meter collab environment where people will both live and work in the same building. It's an idea that's been tested in London and New York and San Francisco and very expensive urban markets, and we're bringing it to Abu Dhabi as well too. But we're bringing it with a net zero building. So those have been the advancements that we've seen even there. So I think what we have the advantage of being able to do is test technologies, showcase them, and then say, okay, what really works for a place like Barcelona, a city that's hundreds of years old, with millions of people living in it and millions more visiting each year.
So I think if what I take away from that is sort of the consumption side, which is moving rather rapidly, digitization, better uses of energy, and better building capabilities. I think from my perspective and the investments that we've seen is also on the energy production side. And I think one of the big questions is, where is all this power going to come from? If we have all these electric vehicles and all these systems, how are we going to power them in the future?
Well, Kareem, I think you're absolutely right. If everyone in Barcelona were to go out and buy an electric vehicle tomorrow, it would overwhelm the grid. There's no way. The grid would blow up. Our TVs wouldn't work. Our computers would turn off. We'd basically be standing outside in the dark. Fortunately, one of the biggest changes that we've seen, and it's happened really since countries like Spain and like Abu Dhabi put early stakes in the ground and said, we need to be more renewable. We need to be cleaner. And even the project we did with Spain, Hemasolar, the price of renewable energy has plummeted since then. But we've gone from renewable energy, and when we put our first big project in Masdar City, it was not an economic project. It was a stake in the ground and a statement to the people in Abu Dhabi and to the world that we are serious about renewable energy. And when Spain did the same thing. But now renewable energy is the cheapest on earth. We are trading back and forth world record pricing for both solar and wind, getting down easily below 2 US cents a kilowatt hour of production. And for everyone listening at home, kilowatt hours are what you buy. When you look at your electricity bill, the utility company sells you kilowatt hours. So they buy kilowatt hours from a producer, whether that is nuclear, coal, or renewable. It all comes in kilowatt hours, and they sell it to you in the same way. Well, now we have a clear path toward a clean grid. What we need now is storage technology. And by the way, electric vehicles actually fit in very well to that. And this is where the smart technology comes in, the digitization comes in. You say, I'm going to charge my car only when there's solar power. Or at night, the wind is blowing, and so we have wind power. So I'm going to charge my car then. Oh, guess what? We have our biggest problem of the day between about 5 and 9. It's when everyone goes home from work, the sun is going down, the solar panels are not producing, but people are cooking, people are watching TV, people are using appliances at home. And so we have a gap. So you plug your car in at home, and by the way, car batteries are lasting longer and longer and longer and are better sources of storage than they ever have been. You pull that from your car, use it to cook your dinner and watch TV, you go to sleep, and then the wind power starts generating, and there's much less industry, so there's less demand, and we fill up your car to go to work the next morning.
So you think that conceivably, and I heard you say that Masdar has managed to do this, to have sort of 24/7 renewable energy or power sourced from renewable energy. You think those systems are possible to put in place? I've seen it done in integrated zones, industrial zones, so on industrial level. I haven't seen it done, or the collaborations between governments. So if in Abu Dhabi, how has the government collaborated? How has Masdar collaborated to make sure that those systems can be put in place?
Well, I think Masdar has been very influential, I think, in setting the regulatory environment for Abu Dhabi. Obviously, we are still part of Abu Dhabi. We're not an island. We operate within the Abu Dhabi parameters. But Abu Dhabi has made a very significant investment in clean energy. So from the first 10 megawatts that we did, we also did 100 megawatts with a technology concentrated solar power, which is very similar to what we did in Spain with Hemasolar. We're now moving on to a 2 gigawatt project, so 200 times the size of what we originally did. I think the first stage for countries is just increase the solar, increase the renewable energy. Then you get to a point where it's about 25% of the grid, where you really need to look at load balancing, and then you need to look at storage. And this is an area where we still need continued investment in storage if we're going to get to a carbon neutral 2050. We have the path on production. We do not have the clear path, because it's become completely economic. We don't have a clear path on storage yet that will get us all the way there. But electric vehicles need to be a part of that. And I'll be honest, Abu Dhabi does not have all that regulation in place yet, but nowhere on earth does. Nowhere on earth that we actually have all the regulations in place, including time of day pricing, which means that you would be incented to use electricity when there's a surplus, and you'd be incented also to use your electric vehicle to power your washing machine at certain times of the day, because it will be cheaper for you overall. And we need both the regulatory environment and the technology for that to happen. But I firmly believe that if we're going to get to carbon neutrality, that's the only way forward.
So I think I've seen this done on industrial level, especially within integrated and special economic zones. I know that Abu Dhabi and the UAE are very good at this. So that's on an industrial scale. On a national level, it seems like it's going to be more challenging. So a centralized effort beyond investment seems to be slightly more difficult. And on a regulatory standpoint, what would you say on a consumer level would be kind of some of the paths for this transition?
On a consumer level, I think first off, moving to an electric vehicle, looking at your energy consumption, and saying, first off, how do I use less? This is the first step. How do I use less? If you own a house, how well insulated is it? Do I have solar panels on my own roof? What am I doing for this? But also, one of the reasons why the regulatory hurdles are there is because consumers push back against changes in their energy bill. They don't like to see that complication. As consumers, we want cheap electricity. We want it when we want it. But I think we need a culture change to say, hey, this climate change stuff is real. This carbon neutrality is important for my children, for my grandchildren. I am on board with the utility company changing the way they bill me, to incentivize me to use electricity when they have excess of it, to disincentivize me to use more. We also may need to block tariffs. Oh, if you are relatively energy efficient, you're going to get one rate. If you are less energy efficient, you're going to wind up paying more. And I think that as consumers, as citizens, beyond consumers, as citizens, and as people who have families and children, that we want the same sort of lifestyle that we've had, we're going to need to culturally get on board. And that some of that's a mindset shift that has come faster in some countries than others.
Super. So I'm here. That's very much on the education level, and also on the government initiative level. One thing that I'm a great fan of is the collaboration between cities. I think that's a very effective mechanism for these initiatives to move forward. From Masdar specifically, what are some of the stronger collaborations that you've done, the most effective ones across the world?
Well, I think we have very strong government-to-government relations. So we have moved in with renewable energy across Europe, but also regionally where we are. So in Saudi Arabia, in Jordan, in Egypt, in Central Asia, we've just actually signed a deal with Iraq, Uzbekistan, Kyrgyzstan, to move into countries that are, say, a 3 to 4 hour flight from Abu Dhabi, that are maybe neglected or overlooked by some of the major players globally, because their total demand wouldn't be nearly as much as, say, Europe, the US, China, Japan, where you'd see, okay, these are big developed countries with lots of demand, but Masdar has really moved in. Additionally, Abu Dhabi has a development arm. So straight from the Abu Dhabi government, that they've empowered Masdar to go to places in the Caribbean, Afghanistan, to do off-grid work in Morocco, off-grid work in Egypt, at the home level in villages that often lack consistent electricity, and to put in a solar power and a battery that people can use at the home level. And if you are not used to having electricity at your home level, having a solar panel and a battery that can power a light and power a refrigerator, this is game changing. And you're still looking at 20% of the people on Earth that lack access to consistent power. That's significantly down from what it used to be. The utility companies have made great progress, but there are gaps. And this is where countries that are developed, that are, we'll use the word rich. So countries like Europe, the US, and the UAE can put their money into the development money into clean renewable projects that really change people's lives, but also let them bypass the coal generation that we're dependent on, and that they can go to a clean future right away.
So Abu Dhabi is currently investing both on a consumer level as well as on the, I guess, national infrastructure level in renewable energies. I know there's a great deal of talk on the potential for hydrogen. I think this is both on a kind of storage level as well as on a vehicle level. Is that something Masdar's embraced, or is that something that's just a sort of fad?
Absolutely. And here, I'll be honest, I don't know how much I can announce publicly here, but we're absolutely focused on hydrogen in the future. We have another business unit that is on new technologies that's focused on that. I've been working with them to be able to increase the hydrogen transportation at Masdar City. But one of the things that, and for everyone listening at home, I've been at Masdar for 12 years now. Things I didn't know about how carbon is emitted. I thought if we cleaned up the grid, if we just went to solar and wind, and got electric vehicles, we'd be good. No, we still have a significant portion of the economy, which is industrial, or it's large scale transportation. So ships, airplanes, steel plants, aluminum plants, automobile plants. Assuming we're still going to want things in the future. These are not powered with electricity. They're powered with heat. You can't run a steel plant on electricity. And so this is where hydrogen comes in. You can run a steel plant on hydrogen. You can run a steel plant on green hydrogen. Currently, the economics are still difficult, but 10 years ago, they were difficult for solar panels and wind. And now with the investments that have been made, with the stakes in the ground that countries have put in, they said, we are going for a cleaner future. We need to do this, even if it is not the cheapest alternative right now. If we make this investment, if we bring it to scale, we can move it toward price equilibrium. And then at some point, we are going to have to pay more in a few areas if we truly want carbon neutrality. But I think there are ways that the developed world can support that and can work on ways that even inside the developed world, that the poorer citizens do not have to bear the brunt of that.
Super. I wanted to sort of focus on that because the next one's going to be a slightly harder question, is the transition away from, and I know obviously Abu Dhabi is key in this, is the transition away from hydrocarbons. I wanted to start from that, sort of the main initiatives coming out of Abu Dhabi, the Middle East, that you think are effective. And then I think we should probably drop into the consumer level and some of those transitions, which are very interesting. So on a national level.
On a national level, I think the biggest thing that the UAE has done is its commitment to renewable energy, and its commitment to a more sustainable future. And the way that it's done that, not just in Abu Dhabi, but investing in more than 30 countries around the world. And some of these are commercial investments where we expect return from Masdar, and some of these are development investments where there is no commercial return to Masdar or to Abu Dhabi. And the second area is with the electric vehicles, a push to bring more electric vehicles in. I would say that there's room to grow here. We have not been as successful with electric vehicles as we have been with renewable energy. But if you look around the world, there's one country on earth that has done well in electric vehicles, one out of 192. So congratulations, Norway. You're doing great. For everybody else, including Spain, including the UAE, including Australia, including the US, we need to step up our electric vehicles game and our transition toward a cleaner surface transportation. And then there is the investment in hydrogen. So one of the partners in hydrogen is ADNOC, the Abu Dhabi National Oil Company. And so the investment is across the government, and the commitment to multiple fronts in clean technology is it's very serious. Additionally, I think one of the things we don't talk about is water. We haven't brought up water. Water is the new oil, right? I mean, someone said data is the new oil. Data is just the new valuation of oil. Water will be the new oil. If we look around the world at the shortages in water and what climate change is doing in terms of water, we need significant investments in water, both in cleaning the gray water for reuse, which one thing that UAE does, all of our sewage water is treated and used for irrigation. So in some ways, we've actually been, because of the lack of water here, water is such a big issue that in a lot of ways they're ahead of some of the Western countries that are more developed and are farther ahead in terms of things like recycling. So every country is going to look at its own specific requirements and move forward with those. But water and the use of water and the production of water is an area that I think the rest of the world can learn from the UAE. And we've done a project with renewable production of desalination from renewable sources. And as we move forward with more renewable energy, that's only going to increase. Kareem, I can't hear you.
Sorry about that. I think one of the key questions is when you start talking about sustainability and almost the autonomous nature of new cities, and I'm focusing on smart cities on the basis that some of the more established countries will start transitioning. What do you think the implications will be for transport and supply chains? We already see automation with regards to energy, but you brought up water, other commodities, production, manufacturing. I think these will all be will have a fairly critical impact on supply chains and those in turn on mobility.
Well, I mean, I think that one of the areas that especially the consumer part of the world is going to have to look at is the supply chain and where the goods how the goods you're buying are being produced. What is the carbon footprint of the production of what we're using? By the way, this is one of the reasons why I think autonomous vehicles have such a potential in reducing total carbon. There's estimated that we have between 5 and 7 more vehicles on the road than what we need. Most of these are sitting in your garage or in a parking lot as we speak. I know mine. As we said, it's the most expensive thing you own that you don't use 23 hours a day. 23 hours a day, a car sits still. If we can unlock the potential where you don't need to own that car, we can significantly cut down on the amount of steel, rubber, glass that's being produced each year. And so that we can actually, by sharing, we can be a lot more efficient with our natural resources. So supply chain, though, is one of the areas where hydrogen fits in. Most of the world, you cannot run a big ship on electricity. You can't run an airplane on electricity. We need fuels that can power the supply chain in a sustainable way, and that is really, I think, where hydrogen fits in. Manufacturing is another area where hydrogen fits in. There are very few plants that you can run on electricity. You need the kind of heat that is generated right now by natural gas, sometimes by coal. But this is an area where hydrogen needs to step in, and we need to step in and produce green hydrogen to really clean up the supply chain and our manufacturing.
Super. I think one last question, and this is more sort of for my personal interest. I see quite a lot of challenges, especially in markets like India and China, where there's a lot of congestion, and you see the transition to be able to put a vehicle charging station, electric vehicles in some of those markets at a sort of very base consumer level. That is really challenging. Does Masdar have any position on that? Do you have any position on that, or how that transition might happen?
No, I agree that is challenging. And by the way, electric vehicles don't solve congestion. An electric vehicle, a Tesla, gets stuck in traffic in Barcelona just as much as a Range Rover, right? I mean, just because you're electric, just because you're not emitting, does not mean you're not taking up the exact same space. So, I mean, but I think first that we can't, in our push toward electrification of transportation, we can't overlook public transportation. That there's no better way to get around a city than a metro. And we're getting the 1 minute left sign. But also, as we look at things like scooters, micromobility, that a significant amount of trips can be taken, 2 or 3 kilometers or less, on a scooter, back and forth to work every day on something that uses very little electricity and is very affordable for countries like this. And scooters are something that have hit the world in the past few years and really blown up because of their ability to produce clean transportation on the last mile and fit in really well with the great metro system.
Super. Thank you, Stephen. Yeah, we did get the 1 minute sign. I think some of the key takeaways on a consumer level is how do you use less? I think that's something that's come out of Masdar. In terms of technology, the potential for EV is growing both on a kind of on a usage level as well as kind of on a battery level. So the integration of those systems, I think, will be very interesting, and the role of governments in being able to provide frameworks for that. I think the rest is, as we rebuild the world, keep these systems in mind. I hope I've covered that. And yes, thank you again, Masdar, for leading the way on all these fronts.
And thank you, Karim, for Barcelona New Energy Week.
And thank you very much, Karim Palmieri y Stefan Severance, por este magnífica keynote donde, bueno, hemos conocido muchas más cosas sobre esta ciudad de cuento que decía yo. Había una vez, hace muchos años, en un país muy, muy lejano, esta ciudad que se llamaba Masdar City, que hemos comprobado a través de esta conversación tan interesante que, bueno, se ha convertido de alguna forma en el sitio donde se experimentan y pasan cosas, ¿no? Donde en 2009 crearon un ascensor horizontal, ¿no? Un nuevo medio de transporte que lo han llamado, supongo, de esta forma, para que nos hagamos un poco la idea de qué es lo que está pasando allí. Y que ahora con el tiempo lo que hacen es aliarse, por ejemplo, con España, con otros países, con empresas de automoción, pues para exportar esa tecnología, para co-crear allí en Masdar City y también en otros sitios del mundo, ¿no? Nos ha contado también Stephen que cuenta colaboración en este caso del gobierno y que se están expandiendo, relacionándose pues con los que tienen más cerca, con sus vecinos, ¿no? Nos contaba, pues ha ido enumerando todos los países que tienen alrededor y que todos se interesan por llegar hacia esa huella de carbono cero, ¿no? que es tan importante. Sabemos que está trabajando en un nuevo proyecto relacionado con el transporte, impulsado por el hidrógeno verde, pero decía, bueno, no sé si puedo hacer spoiler, no puedo contar muchas cosas porque hasta aquí puedo leer. Bueno, en todo caso, exige todo este cambio, un cambio de cultura hacia esa huella de carbono cero, y estoy convencida que en muy pocos años nos van a llegar grandes inventos, grandes innovaciones desde Masdar City. Y ahora lo que va a llegar aquí en Binium Mobility dentro de nada es nuestro siguiente panel. No os lo podéis perder si queréis saber hacia dónde van las inversiones en movilidad. Atención, inversores. Nada, en 10 minutitos aquí en Binium Mobility.